Hi everybody. So today is day 23 and I'm going to talk about trauma today. So I think trauma and traumatic events happen to a lot of us in our lives, and often at the time we don't know how to deal with them, and that impacts us personally, and impacts our development as we continue. And then we often live with like long-term impacts of trauma in our lives. I also think that our society, due to its nature, almost inflicts trauma on us as a byproduct. It's something that is quite common, and a lot of us go through. And then related to that, our society also doesn't know how to really effectively deal with trauma. We're not taught how to process it when it occurs, and to deal with it at that point, which is probably the best time to recover from it. We're more taught to move on from it, to ignore it, to push it down, and to get on with our lives. But then that leads to the reality that the trauma is unresolved, and then it continues to impact us in some way as we continue to progress. So for me, I would say I've gone through some trauma in my life, and I think it has shaped me in ways that haven't been helpful, and that I've had to overcome. I'll go through these relatively quickly rather than dwelling on them. So when I was born, I was actually born with a cyst on my nose. So you can see the scar there actually. So it was quite an unsightly cyst about the size of a marble, and it covered one of my eyes, I think this eye. And it couldn't be removed for 3 months. So I lived with this problem, I guess, for 3 months of my life when I came into the world. So I was born with, there was something wrong with me and it had to be dealt with. And then I went through the hospital operation at 3 months old to have it removed. Went under anesthetic and went through the sort of disorienting, I guess, trauma of that as well, to fix the problem, So obviously that had to be dealt with. But for a young body, it was tough and difficult, I guess. So that was the first sort of event. And then at the end of my first year, or just towards the end of my first year of life, I had a head injury, and like I ended up having a blood clot in my brain, which I nearly died from. But luckily they were able to remove it, and luckily I was able to recover. Yet I was in and out of hospital for a few weeks. I got sick actually when I got out of hospital and had to go back in. And definitely the sort of forceful impact of that on my body would have impacted me. You can see a bit of the scar there, and actually I think there's a scar that goes all the way around. Other people probably see it more than I do. So those sort of traumas have impacted me, like I believe, even though they're precognitive in a way. There's pain in your body. Our body and mind are more connected than we would often admit. And that just sort of lives with you as you progress. And your mind can get impacted even at that young age. Another quick trauma, I think, would be when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I had always tried to be this good little boy at school and, do well at school and not do anything wrong. Probably as a result of some of that very early trauma I just mentioned. But when I was about 8 or 9, one day at primary school, after lunch, I was called to the headmaster's office. And me, along with a few other boys, were told off for bullying a kid in our neighborhood. And I didn't really think I had, but maybe I had loosely been associated with this. But just being called to the headmaster's office and being called out as like bad really impacted me. I felt so bad. And I remember the complete fear of that and what people thought of me and how that lived with me for a number of weeks. I just felt every day ashamed and guilty, and I never knew how to process those emotions. Um, and I had to deal with that. Eventually, I just pushed it all down and I got on with my life. I never really resolved it. I never resolved that fear of who I was or what this meant about whether I'm good enough or whatever. So that was another, I guess, traumatic incident. So I said I was going to say that all quickly, but I think I spent more time than I sort of thought I might. So what is trauma? So there's this great guy called Gabor Maté who describes trauma as disconnection from self. It's not the actual event that is the trauma. It's what you do as a consequence of the event. You choose to disconnect from a part of yourself. And that's a survival mechanism, just to get through the pain and difficulty of the time. But it's actually a disconnection from yourself. He also says that anything that is wrong with you began as a survival mechanism in childhood. And I think there's truth in that as well, and useful for us to ponder. So this disconnection with self is what trauma is. And there's something useful to think about with respect to that. You can't fix the event from your past, but there is an opportunity then to reconnect with yourself, reconnect with that part of your consciousness that you split off from, and reconnect with that part of your soul might be another way to consider it. And I think that is a process of liberation and a process of freedom that we all can go through. It's not something that's really encouraged in our society. We're usually encouraged just to press on. That's your past, it's in the past, move on. But if we never go back to that place of pain where the trauma happened, then we can't resolve that pain and emotion and then reconnect with that part of ourselves. And I think only in doing that will we actually become the fullness of who we are, and really learn to be able to thrive in our lives. So yeah, I'll leave it there. It's just a little bit of an exploration of trauma. I've expressed a little bit of what trauma has been in my life, and I'm saying that trauma, when we recognize it and seek to face it, is an opportunity for like refinding ourselves or finding that lost part of ourselves that we kind of sent away as a means of survival at an earlier time. So I'll leave it there. Do ponder on that if you care to. I think we all have this opportunity to recover and to become more of who we are through actually facing up to the trauma that we've had in our lives. So yeah, again, thanks a lot for listening. See you all tomorrow. Okay, bye.